Welcome to The Explainer. We're going to talk about what happens when a government's most powerful digital weapon gets stolen and then used against all of us. This is the story of a cyber pandemic, a single piece of code that literally went viral and paralyzed the globe. Let's just start with this one number, $4 billion. That's the estimated damage, and this all happened in just a few days. But here's the crazy part. This attack wasn't even really about stealing money. It was about creating pure, unadulterated chaos on a global scale. Imagine turning on your computer and seeing this message. You have not so enough time. I mean, the grammar's terrible, right? But the message is chilling. It meant that everything, your company's files, critical patient records in hospitals, maybe even your own personal photos, all of it was gone, held hostage by someone you'll never know.
So what was this thing? I mean, how does a single cyber attack bring the world to its knees? We're talking about hospitals in the UK, car factories in France, huge telecom companies in Spain, all brought to a screeching halt at the same time. It was called WannaCry. And look, this wasn't your run-of-the-mill virus. The key here is that it was a worm. Think about what that means. It didn't need you to click a bad link or open a sketchy email. Nope. It could spread all by itself, actively hunting for new computers to infect, jumping from one to the next automatically. That's what made it a true digital pandemic.
Okay, so this is where the story gets really wild. The origin of this thing, it's just as scary as the attack itself. Because it didn't start in some dark basement with a bunch of hackers. It started with a government, a spy agency to be exact. The engine behind WannaCry was a piece of code called Eternal Blue. And the best way to think about it is like a secret master key, a master key that could unlock millions of Windows computers. And who built this key? The NSA, the US National Security Agency. They found a secret flaw and built this incredibly powerful tool, a cyber weapon, for their own spies to use. But here's the thing about powerful weapons. They're hard to keep secret. A mysterious group, they called themselves the Shadow Brokers, somehow got their hands on it. They stole Eternal Blue right from the NSA. And then, just a month before WannaCry hit, they just dumped it online, for free, for anyone to use. Absolutely unbelievable. So let's just recap, because this is nuts. Step 1, the NSA builds a top-secret cyber weapon. Step 2, a hacker group, the Shadow Brokers, steals it and puts it on the internet. And step 3, some other anonymous attacker grabs that weapon, bolts it onto some ransomware, and basically creates a doomsday machine. So you've got this incredibly dangerous, government-grade weapon out in the wild. The stage was set. All someone had to do was pull the trigger. And that's exactly what happened on Friday, May 12th, 2017. It just exploded. It started in Asia, and then within hours, it was tearing through Europe. The speed was just breathtaking. I mean, nobody had ever seen anything like it. Before most of the world had even finished their morning coffee, we were in a full-blown global crisis. And look at who it hit. It was totally indiscriminate. We're talking about the UK's National Health Service. Hospitals had to turn away patients. Car factories had to shut down their assembly lines. Train systems, shipping companies. It didn't matter who you were. In the end, over 300,000 computers in 150 countries were infected. But here's the part that's just infuriating. This whole thing was preventable. This wasn't some zero-day unstoppable force. Microsoft had actually released the security patch to fix this problem a whole month before the attack. WannaCry only worked on computers that hadn't been updated. It basically preyed on organizations that just hadn't done their homework. So the world is bracing for an absolute nightmare of a weekend. Everyone thinks this is just going to get worse and worse. And then it just stops. And the way it stopped is maybe the most bizarre part of this whole story. It was all thanks to one person, a 22-year-old researcher who became an accidental hero. Right? So how does that even happen? How does one guy in his 20s stop a global pandemic that had the world's biggest companies and governments completely stumped? Well, the answer is almost too weird to be true. He was digging through the malware's code and found this gibberish, this long, nonsensical string of letters. He had no idea what it was, but he was curious. So on a whim, he spent about $10 to register it as a website domain. He had absolutely no clue what was about to happen. What he did completely by accident was activate a hidden kill switch. Turns out the malware was programmed to do one thing first: check if that weird website existed. If it didn't, the malware would go on the attack. But if it did exist, it would just shut itself down. So by spending $10, this researcher, Marcus Hutchins, basically created a vaccine that stopped the worm in its tracks.
So just like that, the attack was over. The world takes this huge collective sigh of relief. But for investigators and intelligence agencies, the work was just getting started. Now they had to answer the big question. Who was behind this?
And pretty quickly, the digital forensics started painting a picture. These little breadcrumbs started to appear. The code itself looked a lot like other malware used by a group called Lazarus, which has been linked to North Korea. Then you have other weird little clues like Korean fonts in the files, and the timestamps on the code were set to Korea's time zone. All these little pieces, they all started pointing in the same direction. And sure enough, by the end of 2017, it was made official. Both the US and the UK came out and formally pointed the finger at North Korea's Lazarus group. For the record, North Korea has always denied it.
Okay, so with the immediate crisis over and a culprit named, let's talk about the fallout. Because this one event really did change the entire conversation about cybersecurity forever. So what are the big takeaways here?
Well, first and foremost, it showed us that with ransomware, the ransom itself is almost irrelevant. Look at the numbers. The attackers made off with, about $130,000 in Bitcoin? Peanuts. But the total damage? $4 billion. That's from lost business, from cleaning up the mess. The real cost was the chaos. And this quote from Microsoft's president at the time, Brad Smith, just hits the nail on the head. He said it was like the US military having its Tomahawk missiles stolen. And that's the scary truth, isn't it? Governments are creating and stockpiling these incredibly dangerous digital weapons. And WannaCry was the terrifying wake-up call that showed us what happens when they lose control of them. And that really leaves us with the big, uncomfortable question that WannaCry dropped on the world's doorstep. It's a question we're still wrestling with. When a government builds a cyber weapon, and that weapon gets out, who pays the price? Who is responsible for the fallout? That right there is the lingering, crucial legacy of WannaCry.